And Iulian, how does it, you've just arrived from Sochi, how does it sound? How does this play out to Russian ears? In some respects, many argue the Russians are riding high because we frankly have backed off the discussion of Ukraine's future or Georgia's future. Walt Slocum in a session just before this said, in many respects in terms of partnership with Russia, we need the Russians to be prepared to say yes. And as concrete proposals sit on the table for partnership or cooperation on issues like missile defense, we still have ambivalence out of Moscow. What's the tone as you come here from Sochi?
Yes, we all want Russia to be our partner, and there is a but. We want also, I think, some principles to be very clear, put on the paper and to be respected. And my feeling, my personal feeling, is that up to this point, maybe we had the chances for some deals between West and Russia, but not necessarily an agreement, a partnership, which means obligation for each side. So I think that, yes, we need to build a relationship with Russia, and there are opportunities here. But also, I think we should make very clearly the conditions for this partnership, because I think that without these conditions being very clear, I think the partnership will be very difficult to be built. And there is a danger, you know, I mean, one of these conditions, for instance, should be not to have any more initiatives or actions splitting the West, I mean, or diluting the West, I mean NATO or EU, because sometimes, and we have very good public reports on this issue, the feeling is that some of the actions coming from Moscow had as an objective, you know, diluting the West, or at least, how to say, splitting the West. And it is very clearly that when it comes splitting to West, the capacity for diluting EU, it's bigger than the capacity for diluting NATO. This is sometimes, I think, being honest, yes, there are better chances for having good relations between EU and Russia. So we, I think, all have this feeling that there is a possibility, an opportunity, Russia to be our partner, but also we have to be, you know, I've seen a phrase somewhere speaking about the reset policy with reassurances. I mean, yes, we need to push the reset button, but also reassurances, I think, in the same time has to be very, or have to be very clear.
Trust but verify. I want to bring in some questions from the audience, so please catch my eye if you have a question, and I'll call on you in our remaining minutes here. I want to pose one more question to Hryhoriy, but flag me if you want to come in on this debate. In one of your earlier comments, Hryhoriy, you more or less criticized the West, particularly Europe, for its response in the wake of the Orange Revolution, when there potentially was more of a window of opportunity in terms of supporting Ukraine's transformation. I want to turn the cards on you a little bit and say, with all due respect, I think the most auspicious place for reform and progress right now, as we think about this, is not Ukraine, but it's Moldova. So let me put you in Brussels, and say you were sitting in Brussels within the European Union. What should we be doing? What would you do? What should we be doing today to support the dynamism we see in Moldova? If we got it wrong with Ukraine, do we have a chance to get something right with Moldova right now?
Tempting, but try. Give European perspective. So that's an answer which is not a realistic one. So therefore, to deal with the issue on its own merit, recognize the importance of Ukraine in this situation as important, if not pivotal country, and be prepared for that the future elections in Moldova may produce a result that would not make the whole picture clear than it is now, but even more confusing. So which calls for not just strategic patience, but also a willingness to rethink policies and to try to re-engage and to look for the solutions. For that matter, as far as Ukraine is concerned, the EU-Russia dialogue matters for us, because that provides a framework, that provides some priorities, that provides an opportunity for you to listen to some sensitivities that our Russian partner has, and vice versa. Our concern as Ukraine has to do that it should not be going forward at the expense of the legitimate interest of the neighboring countries, which is both Ukraine, which is neighbor of the European Union, and neighbor of Russia. And one of the EU officials said some time ago that the only bargaining power these countries like Ukraine, Moldova, or others have is to stay in the middle. Which is quite, I would say, a vegetarian option. But then if you think seriously, I don't remember who said this, but he said all European countries are small countries, just some of them has not recognized this yet. So, and for the small countries, you have an options. A most typical one is balancing option, which is, I think, some previous presidents of Ukraine exercised, and this one, that was not that president, the current one is try to exercise this, is milking 2 cows, so try to milk 2 cows, and apparently it's not work. So then there is attempt to bandwagon, which is quite delicate thing and dangerous, because there is an overlap in integration spaces, and if you bandwagoning with one, then you have a problem with the other. You cannot reconcile, and you cannot integrate in 2 spaces simultaneously. Then you have to bargain, and Ukraine tried to play this very delicate, asymmetric bargaining game with, including Russia, and sometimes with the European Union, using its strategic assets with its strategic pipelines, which is not always successful, because, and this here we are a difference with Poland. When Poland had a problem or has a problem with, for example, the Russian Federation, then the EU puts all its weight to help Poland. It didn't come from the very beginning, but now it's a matter of fact, to solve some difficult issues with the Russian Federation. So it's not the case in Ukraine. So therefore, we are facing quite, in a real terms, a period that's full of unpredictable developments. This unpredictability has to do with not just an obvious lack of interest as far as this region is concerned from the United States. We've heard this this morning, it was pretty clear. It has to do with the introspective, for obvious reason, the European Union. We still have some strong interest as far as Eastern Partnership is concerned among many countries, not just those who are sitting here in the panel, but also Scandinavian countries. I would name Sweden as the first one. The question whether it would be enough, and that's where enters the question, the real question to answer: modernization. It is good, and we welcome this partnership for modernization that's currently a talk between the European Union and the Russian Federation. But as we understand, the difference in Ukraine until recently, modernization was the same as a Europeanization. As we understand also, for our Russian friends, modernization doesn't mean necessarily, or it doesn't mean Europeanization. It means something different. Therefore, the risk, the real risk, and I'm just addressing our friends in Europe and the United States, the very moment when Ukraine would start defining its modernization agenda purely or primarily on just economic terms, so that would be the moment when the red line will be crossed, and Ukraine will become de facto much more compatible and willing to become much more compatible with the alternative integration space rather than the EU integration space. Because you cannot define, if you're serious about modernization, it's just with purely economic sense.
Very good point, I think.